Hello, everyone. This is Alfredo Abate, your current Chicago Oracle Users Group President. Welcome to today's webinar. As an attendee, you'll be in listen-only mode. You can ask questions in the chat window, which we will monitor. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. We'll also be streaming live on our YouTube channel, and the recording will be available there to view shortly after the presentation is finished. It's great to be here with you today virtually. For those that are new to the Chicago Oracle Users Group, we welcome you. Traditionally, our group meets between 4 to 6 times per year in various locations around the Chicagoland suburbs for presentations, as well as hands-on workshops by Oracle experts, ACEs, and authors. With the restrictions in place due to COVID, we decided to go virtual to continue to deliver awesome technical content to our members. Today is our 16th webinar in a series of 20 that we'll be holding until November 18th. We are down to only 4 more presentations after today. So make sure to visit our website and register for those remaining ones. And of course, our website is COUG.us, and it's also there in front of you. Our user group runs completely unfunded. Our members don't pay any dues, and our meetings have always been free. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, OAPS Net Partners, for providing the Zoom webinar platform. They are an Oracle Gold partner and systems integrator with specialties in areas of financial business solutions based on Oracle applications, both on-premises and in the cloud. They provide services in the areas of AP automation, Apex development, database upgrades, and administration. Next week, don't miss our webinar with Oracle Developer, Oracle ACE Director, and author Kim Berg Hansen, all the way from Denmark, on Analytic Views, the virtual cube. You can register for that one on our website right now. Now today, you guys are stuck with me. We're going to talk about the Oracle Cloud free tier, and as my title says, data for nothing, get your cloud for free. And for those who don't know where that comes from, it's originating from the quite famous Dire Straits song, Money for Nothing, which was quite popular as a kid watching that on MTV. For those of you that are Chicago Oracle User Group members, you probably already know some of this about me. So I've been working with Oracle software since about 1999, mostly as a Oracle DBA, Oracle Applications DBA since about 2006 with eBusiness Suite. Obviously, president of the Chicago Oracle Users Group, also president of the Real Application Cluster Special Interest Group, or RACSIG. I was awarded the Oracle ACE designation for my contributions to the Oracle community. I have a blog. Haven't blogged much lately, but there is some interesting stuff about our past meetings if you'd like to look at that. And you can get a hold of me on Twitter at HeyAlfredoDBA. So I was actually born in Milan, Italy, and came to the US with my parents when I was about 3.5. Love music. That picture on the bottom there is supposed to be a shelf full of vinyl records, which I still listen to and collect. Love listening to predominantly rock, jazz, and blues. And as I mentioned, I'm part of the Oracle ACE program, which I think is an awesome program that really recognizes and rewards community members for their technical contributions to the Oracle community. If you, by chance, are already sharing your technical skills by presenting, blogging, or answering questions on technical forums, you may already be eligible for the Oracle ACE program. You can actually nominate yourself or have someone nominate you. If you'd like to know more about that, feel free to contact me. Thanks. So the company I work for is called Breakparts Inc. We are, as the name implies, a aftermarket manufacturer of automotive braking components. So like your friction, or also known as brake pads, rotors, calipers, things of that nature. We are aftermarket, so we predominantly sell to parts stores in the US. So you're like Napa, Advanced Auto. We have distribution centers across the US and Europe, manufacturing plants in North America, Europe, and Asia. We do have a house brand called Ray Bestis. So if you're into car racing and whatnot, you would recognize that because they're sometimes plastered on the side of these cars. We are a fairly large Oracle software shop. So I'm responsible for a lot of stuff, especially Oracle eBusiness Suite, both 12.1 and 12.2. We have Oracle RAC, Oracle Business Intelligence, SOA, and we've dipped our toes into the cloud with Oracle Transportation Management Cloud, Oracle Sales Cloud, and Oracle Integration Cloud. Get your cloud for free. Let's see if we know what that is all about. I don't know if everybody knows what it is. I'm sure by now you've probably heard about the Oracle free tier, but those that have been around Oracle for a while know that Oracle and free are typically something that are not synonymous, right? If you've had a deal, let's say with the database, you know that if you're using Enterprise Edition, you're going to pay for each one of those cores that you're using. And if you want to use any of the features, guess what? You're going to pay again. So last year at Oracle Open World, Larry Ellison announced and introduced the always free tier in the cloud, which I was actually quite excited. I think most of us should be, because it gets a chance to, kind of see what it's all about without having to spend any of our own money, and maybe use that to make recommendations for our company. So what do you get with the Oracle Cloud free tier? So what'll happen is the first 30 days, you'll get some credits. Typically it's $300. There are situations that if you go to certain Oracle events, or maybe they have a promotion going on, you might get as much as $500. I think I've seen, I don't know if I've seen more than $500, but you can use all that money up in 30 days for spinning up all kinds of instances and using up storage. And you can use any of their services, not just the stuff that'll eventually become free only, free forever. So it's kind of nice to be able to play around with, like, say, Oracle Analytics, or maybe you want to do some digital assistant type stuff. You can use any of that stuff within those 30 days. Obviously, if you spin up some monster machine with lots of storage, you're going to burn through the $300 credit way faster than the 30 days. But once the 30 days are up, you get an always free set of services. And what do those include? You'll get up to 2 databases of the autonomous type. So either transaction processing or the data warehouse. They each come with 1 OCPU and 20 gigabytes of storage. You can have 2 virtual machines with 1/8 of his OCPU and 1 gigabytes of memory. And they give you some storage, 2 block volumes that are 100 gigabyte total, 10 gigabytes of object storage, and 10 gigabytes of archive storage. And then they've got some additional services, load balancers and monitoring and ingestion data points, which quite honestly, I couldn't tell you how to quantify that. The only thing I could quantify is the emails. I know that 1,000 emails is 1,000 emails. The other stuff, I don't know how quickly you would consume those or not. I personally have never reached any limits, but I do very, very small little projects on there. And if they decide to add additional free services, they'll automatically be added to your account going forward. So I think that's kind of nice. And hopefully they do give us more stuff. So when you first sign up for this free tier, you'll want to consider which region to, host your tenancy in. The recommendation is typically choose the region that's closest to you and your users. If you're using this just for personal work and not anything business related, you don't really have to care about the users. I would just choose the closest one anyways. But these are the 5 that are in North America. As you can see, the San Jose one is somewhat new, and they still don't have, at least as of when I captured this screenshot from Oracle site about 2 weeks ago, they still did not have any of the either of the autonomous databases. But I'm sure that'll be there before you know it. So who is this free tier for? I mean, a couple of examples that I think of right away is perhaps you're doing some volunteer work for some sort of nonprofit and they need a small application. You could definitely use the free tier the autonomous database with maybe Apex as a front end. And that's what the proof of concept is going to be that I'm going to show you a little later. For an organization such as that, they'll never have to pay anything for it. Unless they're going to use up 20 gigabytes of data, you'd be surprised at how much data you could store at that amount, especially for stuff that's nonprofit. It's better than holding it in, say, an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database. If you're in an educational setting, you could use this to teach. Developers could use this to learn more about, the autonomous database, and as well as Apex. It's free forever. And the good thing is they're always on the latest and greatest. So if they're maybe working for a company where they are doing some Apex and they're on an older version of the database as well as Apex, now they can be on the latest and greatest and kind of explore some of those features and maybe give them a sense of, having some of those skill sets for these more recent features. And then finally, proof of concepts is where I think this is really beneficial. Even if you are a current Oracle Cloud customer with your organization, you can still use the free tier. And I'll show you some slides of that later on. How about support for the free tier? There is no support. You get a little bit of support during that 30-day window when you're receiving the trial. After that, there is no support for you. There's really no SLA, so stuff could go down. That only happened to me once last year. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it was still when the free tier was rather new. I have not had any issues since then. So you get what you pay for. You're not paying for anything, so you're not going to get any support. But there is an awesome community out there for Oracle Cloud that you could post all kinds of questions in forums, and even people on Twitter that are associated with this product could help you with it. So there is ways around it to some degree. So how do we get started? It's pretty easy. You visit signup.oraclecloud.com. You will give them an email that you have not previously used for an Oracle trial. They'll need a mobile number, which they're going to send you a verification code. And then you need a valid credit or debit card to enter in. Now, I know I hesitated myself for that initially because I don't really like giving my information out, even worried about that I'm going to get charged or, what if my number got stolen? But that's the case with any website these days. But I will tell you that the one thing about Oracle is you can't use more services than the free tier unless you specifically upgrade. So you're not going to get overcharged. I've heard horror stories of people going in and Amazon, AWS is, charging them for stuff and they didn't realize that they had things up and running. Oracle won't do that with the free tier unless you specifically say, I'm looking to upgrade. So it actually works out pretty well. And once you log in, you'll see a screen that looks similar to this, and you'll be able to see all the items that are always free eligible. So your VMs, ATP, ADW databases, where do you want to store data, create a stack. I've never used that, so I'm not really sure what that is. And this screenshots, the next two that I took are actually from my Breakparts cloud account. So just to show you that even though we are a current cloud customer, paying customer, we still have the ability to use the always free options. Now for the database on this particular page, I did have to slide the little slider there where it says always free. It wasn't there by default. So they're kind of, I wouldn't say hiding it, but it's there, you just have to turn it on. And if you go under the VMs, and you make sure to click on that box on the right there that says specialty and legacy, you'll see that the always free is included there. And once you click on that, then you'll see that micro instance is available as one of your options. So again, it's kind of nice that even though you're a paying customer, you're getting these free environments that you can build a proof of concept system on before you start telling your boss, hey, we need to spin these up and start getting charged for them. They're pretty good. Oracle is good about announcements. There's an actual page for announcements, but you'll also receive an email to show you when certain events are going on. Like if you have your instance terminated, then they will let you know about it. And this is the particular thing that I had a problem with last year where a lot of people lost their free VMs. Now, we didn't lose the actual boot volume. We just lost the machine that was associated with that boot volume. And they did spin the VM back up automatically. It took them a couple of days. It wasn't quick. So the SLA was kind of terrible from that perspective. But again, it's free. I wouldn't expect them to be treating it as a P1 type of issue. But yeah, so there's these nice announcements about when stuff is going to happen to your environment. And so I'm sure a lot of people probably ask, well, how does it compare to the other cloud vendors? This particular screenshot I took from Oracle. And you can see that, you know, they give you some stuff for free, but it looks like it's only for 12 months. I don't know if they've changed it since, but they give you a fair amount of, you know, free stuff as well. I think Oracle's probably got them a slight edge on them as far as how much, but it's there as well. And what about Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud? So Azure has a 12-month trial with only $200 in credits, which I can't imagine you'd probably burn that through pretty quickly before the 12 months is up. And then they have some free services available after that. And then Google, the same thing, is 3-month trial with $300 of credits. And they've got like 20 plus free products, you know, so you get things like BigQuery if you want to do analytics, data warehouse type stuff. So I kind of, you know, look at it as like your cell phone vendors. They all have one advantage over the other. They're all just slightly different. One might have one thing that's really good and not so good and so forth. And I kind of compare these as the same. Data for nothing. What the heck does that mean? Well, if you've been around for a little while, you know, for the last 5+ years, we keep hearing that data is the new oil. You know, we keep hearing quotes like, in the last 2 years alone, an astonishing 90% of the world's data has been created. That in 2020, 1.7 megabytes of data is created every second by every person, which is incredible. And they're saying that we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhoods of 463 exabytes of data that'll be generated each day by humans as of 2025. It's just incredible how much data we have. So question is, you know, one, what are some of these companies that are giving us free services doing with the data? But also other companies are starting to emerge that are providing APIs for other organizations to consume either by itself or as a mashup with their own data to help them make business decisions, right? And so APIs are the name of the game. They're being used everywhere, from public sector, businesses, social media sites. You can also develop them for yourself in your own company to be used both internally and externally. Some of these are free, which is what we'll see in a little bit, and some are from paid services. So where do you get these APIs? And you know, I'm not even scratching the surface here, but Programmable Web has a lot of APIs that you can kind of go through and see if there's anything in there you'd like to use. Rapid API is another one. There's some public sector stuff at data.gov. Social media places have APIs that you can use in Google. And even the Oracle Cloud has APIs, right? So you can use their APIs to your free tier to allocate your VM, start it up, shut it down, you know, all kinds of stuff. So it goes beyond just looking at data, but as a way to interface and maybe automate some of your day-to-day stuff. Today, we're looking more at data that we can get from these free places. And you can see the growth has just been exploding. The programmable web is just going through the roof. The API companies are just growing at a crazy amount of rate. You can see the amount of money being invested. This is just investments, over 1.1 billion in API companies alone in 2018. And I'm pretty sure that number has at least doubled, if not quadrupled since then. I was not able to find an updated chart from this company, but there are a lot of companies that are starting up that are just, this is all they do. They provide data for companies at a cost. So it's very big business, and you can see why it's being called the new oil. And this is a couple of screenshots that I got from Postman. Postman's a tool that I use, and I'm sure a lot of developers have used to do API calls. And you can see the growth in API collections. I mean, just 34.9 million in January of 2020. And look at the number of requests per day, 13 million, almost a little over $250 million per month, 150 per second. It's just crazy. So hopefully I've driven home the point that APIs are the name of the game. So now I would like to kind of show you an application from scratch. So I'm too chicken to do a live demo, so I've decided to do it via screenshots. So hopefully you'll bear with me, and it'll provide the same effect of what is possible. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to start off by creating a brand new autonomous database. Why autonomous? Well, it does a lot of, if you're a DBA like myself, a lot of the stuff that we are headached with, provisioning, patching, tuning, all that stuff, applying security patches, protecting against system errors. It's got all those features built in. And I don't mean to sound like an Oracle salesman, because I'm not. But I will say that it's nice to have a database that I don't have to worry about any of those things. With the autonomous database, I was laughing because Jim Saprinsky had a different presentation some time back, and he said, I don't remember the last time I looked at an alert log for an autonomous database. You know, I mean, those are the types of things we kind of get to forget about, the mundane tasks, which is kind of nice. And so here we go. We're going to create an autonomous database, and I just call it my POC. I'm going to create a data warehouse type. And it's automatically going to have the database version for me. Right now it's 19C. And if you can see the little note in orange there, it says, if your always free autonomous database has no activity for 7 consecutive days, the database will be automatically stopped. Your data is preserved, but you know, you can restart it at any time to continue using it. But if it's stopped for more than 3 months, then they kind of take everything back. So be aware of that. But again, it'll show up in the announcements. You'll get an email before they do anything. It's not like they just take it away and then you're SOL. No, that's not the case. And you can see here the OCPU count is at 1 and the storage is, there's your 20 gigabytes. So pretty easy. We just enter in a password. We're going to say license included and click create. And you'll see this provisioning screen come up. And I think for me, it took like 3 minutes. I mean, normally under 5 minutes, you're going to have it provisioned and it's going to look something like this. And once it's up, you know, you have the ability to do some pretty basic actions like stop and restart it. You can restore it. It will make an automatic backup for you. You cannot make your own backup with the free tier. You can only rely on what they do as an automatic backup. And I believe they keep, I thought it was the last 3 copies, no more than that. If you only have one of your 2 eligible free tier, you can create a clone. So if I did a whole lot of work in this ADW after, let's say, a month or so, some time period, and I said, you know what, I'd like to create a clone and do something slightly different with it, you could do that right from here, which I think is kind of neat. And after it's been created, I need to show this screenshot because it says 20 gigabytes, but as soon as you get your blank database, it's already consumed 3.4. So I wanted to make sure that folks are aware that you're not getting the full 20 gig, you know, but again, you're getting what you paid for, which is nothing. And so if we go over to the Tools tab, we can see that SQL Developer Web is available. And it's not bad. You know, it's a pretty basic interface to get to your data and do some SQL statements. It's obviously not as feature rich as the on-premises version that you would install on your desktop, but I'm sure they're going to continue to add to it, but it's nice to have this little interface. You could also connect to this autonomous database from your desktop version, right? You'll download some keys and you'll be able to connect to it as well. So you can use all of the features then that are built into the SQL Developer. They also give you the data modeler. Again, not as feature rich as the on-premise version, but it's kind of nice if you're doing some basic data modeling. In this particular case, I'm just showing an example of the SH, the sales history schema that comes already installed for you in the autonomous database, and just to kind of show you what it looks like. And so there's also the Oracle machine language user administration. That's a whole nother topic, and I'm not going to go over that today, but you can do a lot of stuff with machine learning with the Zeppelin notebooks and play around with their algorithms inside of your autonomous data warehouse. Whole nother topic. Jim Saprinsky did go over that a little bit from our presentation that he gave 2 weeks ago. So if you wanted to go back and look at his presentation on YouTube, you could kind of see what he did. But today I'm going to take a look at Oracle Application Express. And so I always think of it as the easy button app because you only need a web browser to develop, low code framework with built-in wizards, and you can deploy something that is obviously secure, scalable, and survives patching and upgrades. Much better than an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database, in my opinion. And so once you get inside of that area, you will see that it's going to prompt you to create a workspace right away. And so we'll do that. And we'll just call it My POC to keep with the theme. And that's it. We create it. Now we're going to sign out as the administrator and sign in to this new workspace, which looks like this. And from here, we're just going to create a new application. Add some pages. So it's pretty much a blank application. And the name of this application is going to be the Chicago Affordable Rental Housing Developments. And we'll see in a minute why. I have not chosen any of the other features. It's about as plain Jane as you can get with an application. So here we go with the data for nothing. I went to the City of Chicago data portal. So this is a great utility for at least those of us that are here in Chicago that are curious about data that they provide. They've got all kinds of stuff related to educational stats and environment, you know, things like where are all the parks located in Chicago, all kinds of data. I mean, there's so much. But today I'm going to focus on one that I found that I thought was interesting, the affordable rental housing developments. So these are a list of like thousands of units that are available for people that are probably of low income that need some affordable housing. And as you can see, they provide an API endpoint. So keep that in mind for a second. What I end up doing is inside of the application that I just created, I go to shared components and I click on web source module. And from there, we're going to create a new web source module from scratch. And there is that URL endpoint that I just showed you that was on the City of Chicago data portal screen. So we're going to plug that in right there. And it's going to automatically realize for you that, oh, here's the base URL and here's the service that we need to get to the actual resource. No authentication for this particular one. Some of the APIs that are out there are going to require token keys and things of that nature. So you would have to plug that information in here. In this case, we don't need anything for this service. It's freely available for anybody. And so there we'll create the web source. We'll do a quick discovery and that's it. Now Apex is aware of this data that's out from the Chicago City data portal. So I go back to my application, I'm going to create a page. I'll choose the interactive report. And I'll just put a page name in, some navigation information, and I'm going to choose web source here. And in the drop-down box, it'll have the one that I just created. If you had 100 of them, you're going to get 100 to choose from. And all the columns are automatically selected for me, but you can pick and choose if you wanted which columns you want to be displayed. And that's it. As soon as I click run, my application is built, and here's all the data. From inside of here, because it's an interactive report, I'm able to do things like filter, move the data around, the columns around, shift things around. I can group by, pivot. In this case, I'm going to show you just a simple chart. So I'm going to choose the community area, that is the neighborhoods located in Chicago, and I'm going to do a count and display it horizontal. And there it is. So if I wanted to figure out which neighborhoods in Chicago have the most of these affordable rental housing developments, I could see quite clearly that Humboldt Park is in the lead. So the chart was done with no extra coding on my behalf, right? Low code. So I didn't have to do anything. Apex has got a lot of these nice features built in for you. And all of these actions are available to the end user automatically. You can also pick and remove what actions show up when they look at an interactive report. You don't have to have all of them there. You could remove them all. And so that's great. But what's the next level up that we could do? How about a map? Because I think a map will make more sense in this case. And so what I do is inside of my application, I go back to shared components and I click on plugins. And what I'm about to do is I'm going to add a Google Map plugin that was created by Jeffrey Kemp, who is, I believe, an Oracle ACE director. The newer versions of Apex do have the Oracle mapping features, which we'll get to see an example of that in just a little bit. But for this one, I decided to use the plugin that Jeffrey had created, and it actually works quite well. And so from here, we're going to do an import, and I'm going to just drop the file that I downloaded from his GitHub page. And you can see we're installing it into this application. It is going to ask you for a Google API key. That's about the only catch with this particular plugin. So the Google API key is free. There are limitations to how many calls you can make, obviously, because Google, that's a service for them to do mapping functionality. So they'll allow you with the developer key to do, I don't know how many it is per day. I've never run into the limitation, but I've only done it for these little proof of concept systems. But once we enter that in, it recognizes it and says, okay, you're allowed to do that. And that's it. Now in my list of plugins, I can see not only the default ones that Apex gives us, but also the Google Map. But I do need a little code. So I did lie a little bit. There is a little bit of code that we need to get this to display properly. But luckily for me, the Oracle Apex community, because it's so worldwide and so far reaching, that there's a lot of examples out there. And this particular one is from Karsten Sarsky, who is an employee of Oracle and one of the Apex gurus. And I took his example, obviously modified it for what I needed it to, and was able to create a type with the columns that I needed for what I want to display. It also requires this function, which inside of the function will actually call the web source. So it'll call out to that API. Once I do that, and I'm creating this in the database, right? I'm just using the SQL window. You can use SQL Developer, whether it's the one that's built into the Autonomous Data Warehouse, or Autonomous Database, I should say, or the one that's on your desktop. So you do it this way. And then I just go back to my Apex application, and I'm going to add a new region. Once that region's up, we're going to see that I just create a new title. I choose the plugin. You can see it there, the JK64. Location is local database. I'm going to run an actual query. And the query has just a little bit of HTML code built into it so that you're going to see in a moment, the pins will format properly. And so once I add all this in my region, I save it and I click run, and I finally get a map that makes a little more sense of how these different areas are displayed. So in this particular case, once I slide my pointer over one of the pins, it'll show me where it's located. In this case, in this example, it's near West Side. And it shows me the address, the phone number of the management company. And it tells me that it's a multifamily location, and it's got 176 units. So what would I use this for? I go back to the original slide that I showed you earlier. If by chance you happen to be volunteering for an organization, let's say I was working in the city and I wanted to help people find some affordable rental developments, I could use an application like this to look at all the ones that are available in the neighborhoods in Chicago and call them up and see if there's anything available for that person. I think it's much quicker than going through just a list, and you can visually see it. Perhaps these people, are working nearby one of these locations and would like, obviously, their home to be as close as possible to their job. This would help them out. So this is just a very basic example. There's all kinds of stuff that you could probably do with this. So I want to show you a few more actual examples of applications that were created with the free tier. This one is from Oracle ACE director, Heli from Finland. We had her on I think it was almost a month ago now, on machine learning. So she created, her and two other colleagues of hers created this Finland COVID-19 application. And it's a application that allows people to see the places and times where somebody tested positive for COVID-19. And the data is all collected by volunteers. So you can go in here and you can kind of see, well, was anybody at the school or at the library that I'm going to, a couple days ago, almost like a contact tracing. And I thought it was pretty impressive. In the first 24 hours, they had 100,000 visitors. And now this is a country of only 5 million. So that's quite a set of visitors, all done on the free tier. And they initially used the Google Maps, but then they went to Oracle Maps. And what does that look like? We'll see that in one more slide. So here's some nice charting that they did, all inside of Oracle Apex. And see, here is one of the Oracle maps. You can see they did a heat map and showing where the exposures are. Obviously, it's concentrated in the Helsinki, which probably has the largest portion of their population. And they also did something with pins, similar to the example I showed you. Theirs is a lot nicer. I noticed that when you actually click on the pin, it'll keep drilling down and you can get down to a single person in that area. So that's kind of nice. And you can see they are using the Frankfurt region in the URL. So just to prove that it's on the Oracle Cloud there. A few weeks after Oracle announced at Open World, Todd Sharp, who's a developer advocate for Oracle, ran this interesting blog post that really caught my attention. And it was how to set up and run a free Minecraft server in the cloud. Caught my attention because I have a teenage boy who plays Minecraft. And what cooler thing to do than to have your own server that only he and his friends are allowed to join in a game. So he was quite popular at this time when this got released. And I followed Todd's example and created this Minecraft server. And you can see it's been running, it's still running since last December 21st. So it's been up for almost a year, have not had any issues. He can have somewhere around 4 or 5 friends. If you start getting above that, it will cause some game laggy. So he was ecstatic when he got this. And like I said, he just loved the fact that he had his own server. And so with that, if you only remember 3 things today, Oracle Cloud Free Tier is always free. Learn about APIs and what data is available to you. And start off with a simple proof of concept. Of course, we're only scratching the surface today when we have a presentation that only lasts about 40 minutes or so. And your best friends are always the documentation and all kinds of training material that's available. Here you can see the free tier sign up, the official documentation for infrastructure as a service, the OCI training videos. If anyone has missed out on the announcement that came out back at the end of March, Oracle not only gave us a bunch of OCI training videos that I think you used to have to pay Oracle Education for previously, they're now available for free for you to review and learn about the autonomous data warehouse, key concepts on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And in conjunction, when they announced this at the time, they had it released. They had also given people vouchers for signing up for the exams. So a colleague of mine and myself took advantage of that, and we found the training was actually quite excellent. So I highly recommend that you review that. The Oracle Apex curriculum, if you want to learn more about Apex, I did this over the summer. Came out last year in, I think, January. And it takes about, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 16 hours. So maybe a couple weeks, a couple weekends, something like that. But kind of get you up to speed on how to use some of the more advanced features of Apex and some of the basic stuffs. And of course, the documentation. And to my surprise, good friend of mine, Adrian Ping and Luc Demanche, released a book on getting started with the Oracle Cloud Free Tier, which I actually went out and purchased because I knew I was going to be giving this presentation and was hoping to get some tips out of it. And it's an excellent book, highly recommended. It was released September 22nd, so it hasn't even been a month, but you could purchase that on Amazon. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening to me talk. And if you want to get a hold of me, you always can at alfredo.abate@gmail.com or on Twitter at HeyAlfredoDBA. And if anyone has any questions, I'll wait about a minute or so. I don't see any at the moment in the chat window. You can let me know if you have any questions. And in case you missed the beginning, I'd also like to remind everyone that Kim Berg Hansen is going to be with us next week. So Oracle ACE Director, author. He helps out with the SQL Dev Gym. So really excellent presentation from him next week. I'm very excited. He's from Denmark. So this is our third European presentation, I'll call it. We had Chris last week and Helly a couple weeks before that. So a couple of questions are coming in. And the first one is, can we get the deck? Yes. So once you go back to the COUG page where you were hopefully got the initial registration link from, a little later tonight, it will get converted to both a icon for you to download the slide deck, as well as the link to the YouTube video in case you wanted to watch it again. And then the next question from Trevor, any experience integrating Apex Autonomous DB with Financials Cloud? I don't have any experience with that. From everything that I've heard, it's quite possible. I just have not personally done it, but I've heard a lot of people mention this. There was actually a presentation from, and if you send me an email, I can get you a link to it. I think it might answer your question, from a good friend of mine as well, Sylvain from Insum. So Insum is the company up in Canada that does a lot of Apex stuff, and they do Apex with eBusiness Suite. He gave a presentation, it was just 2 weeks ago or so, on Apex and how to use that with integration of all the, not just Financials Cloud, but like HCM and things of that nature. So that might answer your question. Maybe he might be able to give you some insight as far as experience, but I can get you that information, Trevor, if you'd like to contact me after this. Okay. Any other questions? I mean, I highly recommend give it a try if you haven't yet. It's free. It costs you nothing to do it. It's fun to play with. Makes you feel like you're staying on top of the future as far as what folks are doing out there, what's available. So, okay, I don't see any other questions. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for attending today, and we'll see you all next week at the same time, same day of the week on Wednesday, and have a good day. Thank you.